Ninchi True Crime, my dear, how are you? Lurking almost 2 a.m. here. Aussie election results from weekend were a direct backlash against Mr. Fart. I just found out this morning that that is what that word means in the UK. Fart. Like not just a fart, a really loud, disgusting fart with a really bad smell. I thought they were kidding. I had to like look it up a whole bunch of times. Liberal Party was decimated. Um, Trump Liberal Party was decimated. So here, when we say liberal in the States, that means like the alternative, the what they call the left wing, and then the that's the liberals, and then the conservatives are the right wing. But yeah, I think that what you mean for you guys in Australia is that the conservatives are considered liberal the way our libertarians, like that's another party that has kind of been usurped by the Republicans, the libertarians. And because their name is libertarian, some people get it confused and think that they're more liberal. And it's all how you define things. Anyway, it's a joy to see you, my dear. And let me just get the ball rolling because I pretty much have exactly an hour that I can be on live. And I'm so excited to be on live because it's been like 3 days. I didn't do one Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. I'm dying to talk to you folks. Hello again. There you are. Our libs are like your Dems. Well, so our Democrats, I don't know, because you said Liberal Party was decimated, and I know that anyway. I think that our Democrats are what we consider more liberal. So I don't know if that's the same for Australia. I'll have to look it up. And yeah, I don't want to be confusing myself. And I know that it's late at night for you. And so, yeah, different cultures. But it's interesting that you're here, Ninchi, because I have been looking into a lot of Australian stuff. And I know that normally, like you being from Australia, you're looking into more American true crime because I don't know, our libs are associated with Trump. Oh, isn't that wild? Yeah. So yeah, that would be like the libertarians are associated with Mr. Fart. Gotcha. And you know what? I'm not going to be able to highlight the freaking chat because my mouse is on the blink again. So I either need to have an external mouse, which I can do that, or I need to get the computer sent in, which I don't really want to do because that takes forever. Anyway, there's so much to talk about. And that terrible, that young woman that was red rummed just a few weeks ago, like 6 weeks ago, that was 19 years old. And then the person who did it, I think, took his own life. What a nightmare. And then, the big one that I've really been focused on is Virginia Giuffre and how that ties in with what I call our Trumpster fire and just mass distractions. I feel like Donnie's ties to little E could be the end of him, and that he knows that. And so he's just going even more insane than normal in creating as many distractions as he can, like little fires everywhere, right? Anyway, let me get started with all the regular stuff. And I'm just so happy to see you, my dear. I've been seeing your posts, and yeah. What was it that one of your things got taken down? I know they've given you a really hard time. And why would that be? Would that be because of like the whole like international ring that Virginia Giuffre was associated with, that little E was associated with? It's unreal, isn't it? It's so horrifying. So, all of the statements that I make, everything I say is simply my opinion for the sake of hoping to start a conversation, open up a discussion, learn something, be educational. All of my videos are made for YouTube. It's an entertainment platform. And what else? Yeah, I think it's because of that ring. Yeah, yeah. So Maddie, I mean, her videos and photographs were definitely getting uploaded to that crap. I believe you, Ninji. I think you're on it. Cause yeah, it's insane and it's huge. And the Diddy case, the trial has started today, apparently. Did I say my whole disclaimer about all my videos are made for YouTube? It's an infotainment platform. Please hit your like button if you don't mind. And Madalena, possibly also. Madalena Kojakari is not one that I am familiar with. I'll have to write that down and check it out. But I even think Kylie, Rodney. Yeah. I don't know if you have an opinion about that. Madalena Kojakari. So, yeah, our president, Trumpster Fire, has been making some crazy posts from the official White House account, like the one that I used in the thumbnail of him all weird, muscular, and with his sword and his lightning, and he's got this other one of himself. Maybe I'll do like a split screen later with it, where he's holding a lightsaber, and of all colors of lightsaber, a red lightsaber, which means the dark side. I did not know this because I'm not like a Star Wars fan, even though, of course, I saw it the minute it came out when I was 10 years old. I thought Battlestar Galactica was so much better, but I guess the rest of the world did not. um, and so, yeah, one of the channels that I like to watch a lot uh, asked that question, like, why does he have himself with a red lightsaber? And I didn't even know that the different colored lightsabers meant different things. That's how out of it I am. Going to just lurk and listen now. Well, thank you, my dear. Hello, Mrs. Amir Ninja. I took the package to the post office. I sent you a message about it, or I put a message to you in one of the comments, Mrs. Amir. That little tiny envelope with a bracelet in it was going to cost $60 to ship to South Africa. I had no idea. I don't think I've ever shipped anything internationally, and I was just blown away. $60 was the cheapest. It went all the way up to 400. I was at a UPS store, so they have like regular postal service, UPS, and maybe one or two others. And I could have taken it to FedEx to find out how much they would charge, but I was like, yeah, that's just going to have to wait until my friend goes to visit her family there. And I appreciate you being open to that suggestion, because that is crazy. Crazy, I tell you. But I am excited to get that sent to you through my friend. So that, I think it'll be, it might not be until mid-July, but that's like at the latest, it'll be mid-July. I haven't asked her yet when her next trip is, but she usually goes twice a year, like in the summer and in the winter for Christmas. Yes, ma'am. I said you can just wait for your friend's next visit. Please don't beat yourself about it. No, I was just proud of myself for getting it packaged up and getting it checked. So I have amazing news to share with you guys, and I'm so excited. On Friday, I took Coco to her follow-up appointment at OSU Cancer Treatment for the Animals, and they gave her a clean bill of health. So they do want to see her again in about 5 or 6 months, but we're about, what is it, 4 months out from her last radiation was on Valentine's Day. So yeah, just about 4 months. And that was just the best news ever, that we have successfully eradicated the cancer twice now. So 2 surgeries and then the radiation to prevent it from growing back again, because the first time it grew back right away. So, yay! I know, isn't that so exciting? So let's get into this crap because, like I said, I don't have a lot of time and I kind of drive myself crazy with my rambling at the beginning of my videos before I get into it. So, I think that this president that we have, I really think that his assignment in the job, I think he's a puppet for Putin. I mean, PP. And I think that his assignment is to distract everybody with his clown antics and tactics and just to make as much noise as possible. Look over here so that nobody looks over here to see what's really going on as they're committing atrocious crimes. And I'm just going to say straight up, I think that little T and the big E, all they do is commit crimes all day long. Like, they are so impulsive and compulsive, they can't stop themselves. And the longer it goes on, the heavier the damages are for themselves. I believe that they will get their comeuppance and that they will be prosecuted. In the meantime, it's hideous. Like, let's just say all the children that are starving internationally because of the US aid that's been canceled. So in the meantime, a lot of people's lives are extinguished because of this ridiculous administration. And it is just insane. It's just insane. But I think it's become abundantly clear to me, and I think to many, many people, that the Trumpster fire is an operative for PP. And PP and China, as he calls it, those two countries are closely aligned. So it's on, it is on. And I appreciate that there are a lot of politicians and people in positions of power that are doing a lot to combat it. I hope that it's enough, and I hope that it happens quickly. So, yeah, it is crazy. I didn't ask to check the sound. Check. I'm going to guess that it's okay, since here we are, 12 minutes in. And yeah, what else? Jessica Aber. That might be a name that people don't know so well. She was the 43-year-old attorney that was found deceased in her own bed, I think 6 weeks after she this is weird. I got my new iPhone up and running, so sorry. Let's see what I got going on. Jessica Aber. It's hard for me to do all these things with new gadgets. I'm going to forget about it. She specialized in cryptocurrency crimes, and she resigned from her position. I think it was like the day before the new administration was inaugurated. And then when she passed away, it was the same night that the big E was balancing the spoons and the forks on his fingertip at the $1 million dinner up in Bedminster, at the Bedminster golf course, with the Trumpster fire and all the other weirdos from that administration. And he's just there with his freaking star on his fingertip and holding it up for, like, I don't know, an hour a day, a week. Like, look at me, look what I can do. Anyway, Jessica Aber died that night, 43 years old. And I think that she would have been the first one to be investigating all this cryptocurrency scams that we see going on. I think that that's extremely relevant. I think that those are some of the biggest crimes that are going on within this administration. It's just crime after crime after crime. the cryptocurrency is huge. The air traffic control is huge. We got more mayhem with that. And then, trying to basically plunder all of the Earth's minerals and, you know, deplete the Earth's crust, the shelf, and the core of anything and everything that they can to sell and to power their ridiculous cyber trucks and crap like that. It's just a freaking money grab. And it's so out of control. Like I said, these lying criminals, they can't stop themselves. And that's all they know is how to lie and how to commit crimes, and then they commit more crimes. So I think that it's quite apparent that the big E got involved with the government in order to prevent himself from getting arrested and having to serve hard time. And I think that that was the driving force with Donnie as well, was to prevent having to do hard time for himself, and that they both were willing to lie, cheat, and steal as much as they needed to in order to win. Because, I mean, they can either be the billionaires that they are and think that they own the world and the universe, or they can be in a 8x8 metal and cement prison without a blanket and a toilet and a metal or cement slab to sleep on, right? It's what they deserve. And I do believe that that is what they will get. With Donnie turning 79 in a couple of months, who knows if he'll live long enough to get tried and sentenced. And with the big E being, what is he, like 50 or so? He could easily pass away from an overdose, like Virginia Giuffre may or may not have. And when I say overdose, I mean overdose, in quotes. So Virginia Giuffre was the third victim of Little E's to allegedly pass away from an overdose. A lot of coinky dink, shall we say. And I also wanted to add that overdose is just another way of saying poisoned, in my opinion. If the person didn't do that to themselves, I mean, of course, you could have like an accidental OD, you can have an intentional OD, or you can have a poisoning that's made to look like an overdose. And in the end, it essentially is an overdose. It's just a different type. So I think that we should call it what it is. I think it's more likely that Virginia and the other two victims that passed away previously. I have so many notes from the last 3 days. I don't even know how I'm going to find anything in here. But let me see. Because one of them was like 29, and then the other one was 36, I think. And so Little E would have been sentenced to about 45 years of prison in his first court that Alex Acosta massaged and gave him that sweetheart deal. He could have gotten up to 45 years in prison, but instead he was sentenced to 13 months with work release. And that's just disgusting. So here, I think the other names are, dang it, all of the crimes that happened in Palm Beach with Little E and with Little T. I mentioned last week that Palm Beach County was also called Corruption County, and it goes way back to basically mafiosa crap, right? So Mark Dugan was the police officer or sheriff's deputy that worked for Palm Beach County that then went and hid out in Russia and has been there for, I think, about 14 years, hiding out and running artificial intelligence fake news websites, like 150 of them. And oh, here they are. There, I was getting really frustrated with myself. So Carolyn and Adriano was the one that was 36 years old, and this was just 2 years ago in 2023. She was 14 years old when she was abused the first time by little E, Carolyn Adriano. She was found at an upscale, like Doubletree Hilton hotel in Palm Beach with an apparent or alleged overdose. Again, she was 36 years old, so it was 22 years after she first was victimized. And it was only 2 years ago that that happened. Very, very sad. And it might have been West Palm Beach, actually. I get confused with the Palm Beach County and the West Palm Beach. I don't know if they're one and the same. I think they're two different things, but they're all like right near Miami. I know that. So Lee Sky Patrick was the other one. She was the first victim to be found in a sleazy hotel in West Palm Beach in 2017 from an apparent OD, and she was 29 years old when that happened. And so we've got Lee Sky Patrick, Carolyn Adriano, and now Virginia Giuffre. And then we've got Jeffrey, little E, and the way he was Epsteined. And then we got Jean-Luc Brunel, who was also Epsteined, and he was Epsteined in France in 2022. So he was found in the exact same manner that little E was found, in his cell, with torn sheets, having apparently done this to himself. And I have mentioned a bunch of times when little E did this, that all the guards fell asleep, that all the surveillance cameras were on the blink. And what I didn't know was that he also had a cellmate. His lawyers demanded that he never be left alone because they were sure that this type of thing would happen. But his cellmate had been removed, doing NK. So I removed it. Anyway, that's from the Watts case. An annoying little thing that people who know. Epstein's cellmate had been removed just a few hours before he was found in there, not alive anymore. Absolutely crazy. So it's great news. Perfect. I'm sure she was after Big E fake Doge. Involuntary OD. Yeah. So we've got all this stuff going on with the Big E, who claimed that he could save about $2 trillion by going in and getting free access to all this really privileged private information. And then midstream, he reduced that by 50% and said, oh, it'll be about $1 trillion. Now it's about maybe 1.5 billion, and I don't think that that's even panning out. Maybe 1 billion, and I don't even know if that's panning out. That's a 20th of where he started with the 2 trillion. And clearly, in my opinion, he did not go in there to save money of our government. He went in there to save his own hiney, because he was going to be not just getting fined to the tune of over $10 billion for, I think, 11 outstanding investigations that he was under, but he was also very likely to serve prison time. And by going in under the auspices of Doge, he was able to fire all these people that were investigating him, and he was able to take a sledgehammer or a chainsaw to all these departments that were investigating his companies. And mind you, that these investigations are primarily for breach of safety, like non-compliance with regulations. And that's what he's after, is to abolish regulations, which is really, really frightening when you consider the type of work that he does. I mean, just look at the airline industry. And as soon as he got his hands in with Doge, all of the planes and helicopters and things literally just falling out of the sky, and not just things, but things with some VIPs aboard that just happened to be the specific airplanes and helicopters with people that own and run companies that are in direct competition with his companies. So it's really very frightening. And it's so hard to keep up with. And I'm just really happy that I've been able to look into some of the cases and figure out who these people are. Like, in particular, the airplane that crashed in Boca Raton a few weeks ago, the Stark family, Robert Stark and Stephen Stark and Brooke Stark. And the family, the granddad started a company called like US Communication and Intel or something like that in Boca Raton 40 years ago, that primarily works with satellites and cables and networks, business networks. And then his son had just been appointed to be the CEO. So the dad, Robert Stark, was 81. The son, Stephen Stark, was 54. And then the daughter, Brooke Stark, was 17 and just finishing up her junior year of high school. And the airplane, the small airplane that they were on, the Cessna jet, literally crashed down the street from the flagship of the company that the granddad started 40 years ago. Very, very, very successful company that basically works very closely with Hewlett Packard, Microsoft, Cisco, and a couple other companies. So just a small handful of companies, but the biggest companies in the industry. So a very, very successful company. And trying to find out the type of company or the name of the company was almost impossible. Like, all you could find was just this vague reference to company. And I was just bound and determined, because I was like, I just have an inkling that this is something. Just like that family of 6, I think it's the Groff family. Is it Graff or Groff? Graff. I think it's Graff family that crashed in the Catskills Mountains on the first day of Sabbath. The mom, the dad that were both surgeons, the daughter that was studying to be a neuro brain surgeon and engineer like her dad, and then her brother, who was working in a law office, and then his girlfriend that was about to start law school at Harvard, and was already specializing in immigration law. And then the daughter's boyfriend, who was an investment banker. So that family of 6 that crashed in that small plane in the Catskills Mountains, right near the border of Connecticut and Massachusetts. So it was in New York where it crashed, but it was so close to the border, like, and then so close to all these state parks, which really just creates a jurisdictional nightmare, and it makes it a lot easier for crimes to go undetected or to get covered up when you're dealing with state lines, county lines, the jurisdictions of national parks versus state parks versus county parks. It gets nuts. And that airplane crashed on the same day that Governor Shapiro's mansion, or I like to say the state of Pennsylvania's governor's mansion, was firebombed. And what strikes me to be one of the most suspicious elements of all of these cases is the lack of El Presidente coming forward and making statements of condolences and sympathy and just addressing what happened and the tragedies. And he just doesn't want to do anything like that. He didn't even want to do that with the Black Hawk chopper that crashed into the American Airlines on January 29th. He refused to go to the crime scene. And yeah, I'm going to call it a crime scene, not just an accident scene, because to me, that's very telling evidence that he's got something to hide. Like, why wouldn't you go down to the Potomac River and state your deepest sympathies and your heartfelt regret of such disaster happening right there at our nation's capital? And so over the weekend, just this weekend that passed, here we are, May 4th today, or is it? I think it's the 5th already. It's Cinco de Mayo. Over the weekend, there was another Black Hawk chopper that almost crashed into 2 airplanes at the same airport, at the Reagan National Airport. I think I have that in my notes where I can find it quickly. Let's see. I might be speaking too soon. Yeah, Reagan Airport, 2 planes do go-arounds to avoid the Black Hawk military chopper. Unbelievable. And then, this is another Hegseth failure, and it's another Sean Duffy failure. And it seems like that the military choppers were grounded from that area since the Black Hawk crash at the end of January until just about a week before this near miss. I'm not sure on that, but that's what it sounded like, that all of the government military helicopters were grounded, and then they had just released that restriction, and then a week into it, not 1 but 2 planes. And I think that the Black Hawk helicopter was, again, operating outside of the bounds of what they were supposed to be. So again, these are rules and regulations that are for a very good purpose. And rules and regulations are exactly the things that the big E and the little t are trying to abolish. And then also RFK Jr. with the Department of Health. It's nuts how he wants to abolish restrictions and regulations on things like milk and vaccines. And, I sometimes fall down the rabbit hole so far that I can't get up. This is one of those times. For a while now, I've been wondering if the COVID was not a product of Donnie's doing. And I'm sure I'm not the first person to think that. I'm sure I won't be the last person to think that. But especially with his adamant opposition to wearing masks, his adamant opposition to getting vaccinated, mocking people that get vaccinated, calling it the jab. Yeah, there's a lot of people that for various reasons can't or shouldn't get the vaccine. But overall, I think it's something that most people wanted once they knew it was safe and knew that it could save their life and the lives of many others. So now I'm wondering if this COVID wasn't, if the pandemic wasn't intentionally started in efforts to derail the upcoming election. So the virus hit our country really hard in March of 2020. So that was about 7 or 8 months prior to the election of November of 2020 that he lost. Allegedly. He doesn't believe it. He won't admit it. But again, it's something that I hadn't really thought about, and I'm sure that many others have. And I tend to go very slow with those types of ideas and conspiracies because it's just too easy to jump on that bandwagon and just be out in left field and think everything's a conspiracy. But when your country is in grave danger of and in the when it's like a political instability, when it's safety instability, you can't have an election. Like that's what's been happening with Ukraine, right? With Zelensky. And then little T accuses him of being a dictator and trying to perpetuate war so that he can maintain power, where this man that I fully believe stole the election this time around, I think that there's a very good possibility he stole it the first time that he allegedly won when he was number 45 in 2016. The computers are easy to manipulate, and what they do is they shut them down, and then when they turn them back on, the numbers have changed. And that's exactly what happened the night of that 2016 election. It's exactly what happened. Clinton was ahead. The computers went down at about 1:45 a.m. East Coast time, I think it was. And, I was awake all night practically, just scared that he was going to win. And it was looking like he didn't have a chance. And then I fell asleep simultaneously for just like less than an hour at the same time that the computers were down. And then when the computers came back up and I came back up, he was ahead. And I suspected foul play right away, but I didn't know if it was even possible. I mean, I think anything's possible. If there's a will, there's a way. And it's become so clear to me that he is PP's puppet, the guy who has been at the head of what was formerly the USSR. So he's an operative, he's dishonest, he's a thief, he's just so out of control. And with these freaking memes of himself all muscular and young and disrobed. I mean, come on. Usually he has the mentality of a toddler, but I mean, in that type of instances, he's got more the mentality of like an adolescent. And I expect my stream to get cut now, since I'm just slamming away at this douchebag that I think has put so many people in danger. So many people. And when is it going to stop? I mean, the insurrection itself was atrocious. And then, in a way, even more atrocious was him basically pardoning 1,600 criminals. And then he's talking about all these quote unquote dangerous criminals from these other countries that he's deporting without due cause. It's like, dude, who's the dangerous criminals? You and your homies. Give me a break. Give me an effing break. So, yeah, today's just a rant, isn't it? Just an absolute rant. But I think that I said this in my last video on Thursday, that when Donnie was addressed on the tarmac the day that he was flying to Italy for the Pope's funeral, and a reporter asked him if he had any thoughts about Virginia Giuffre, and his response was essentially, it's really sad, or something like that. But my point is that how on earth did he even know her name? How on earth did he know her name? I think that he gave himself away by giving a response like that and not pretending that he'd never heard of her the way he does with so many things, where he's just like, oh, I've never heard of that. Like the 4 American soldiers who were missing in Lithuania before they were found deceased. I haven't heard anything about that. You asking me this question is the first time I've heard anything about it. It's like, A, it's your job to know. B, you should be embarrassed if you don't know. C, you're lying because your people would have told you. And D, you're lying because you would have immediately said, wait, what? How come none of my assistants have told me about this? How come I wasn't briefed? I mean, stuff is so idiotic. It's ludicrous to try to keep up. Interstate madness. Sorry, been hopping on and off dinner time. Oh, you're so sweet. You are so sweet, Mrs. Amir. So, yeah. Poor Virginia. I mean, she was in her early 40s. I think she was about 41. The abuse from little E started when she was 16 or 17. Remember, she was working at little Donnie's Mar-a-Lago when Ms. Maxwell lured her into their lair. And poor Virginia had been abused. She'd been violated, I think, when she was 7. And then I think she was getting abused and violated when she was in her early teens, like 13 and 14. So when this abuse with Maxwell and little E started, it was all she knew, really. She didn't know how to stand up for herself. And what's so phenomenal is that she ultimately did stand up for herself, and she stood up against these people that she knew she was in danger for speaking out against a member of the royal family and other rich and powerful individuals. So the fact that she was recruited from Mar-a-Lago is alarming. It's absolutely alarming that the El Presidente has never addressed that and stated how horrible that is, that happened at a place that he owned when he owned it. And this was his employee who was basically drafted or recruited for this international pedo ring with his buddy. his buddy. So let's do a little bit of math if I can. If she was about 41 and she was recruited when she was 16 or 17, is that about 25 years? I think so. So going back to about the year 2000, maybe is about when she first crossed paths with these demons, demonic individuals. So the year 2000, just trying to think what was going on. I think that Donnie purchased Mar-a-Lago in the 80s, I think. I know that he only paid 10 million for it, and that was part of the big lawsuit that happened, that he has the 34 felonies against him, that he claimed that Mar-a-Lago was worth 1 to 1.5 billion when he paid 10 million. If it wasn't the 80s, it was the 90s, but I think it was the 80s. And he paid 10 million, 5 million of that was for the house, for the Mar-a-Lago. 3 million of it was for the contents, all of the furnishings, and then 2 million was for the 400 feet of waterfront property. And then for him to overinflate that to the tune of 1 to 1.5 billion dollars, and this was so that he could get loans from banks, larger dollar amounts and smaller interest rates. So this was a theme, still is a theme. It's been a theme throughout his life, and it's very likely what got him to be in deep crap with Vladdy, because Vladdy bailed him out back then in the 80s or the 90s when nobody else would. Vladdy bailed him out. And then you have to remember that Donnie was promoting Russian quote unquote beauty pageants, much the same way, in my opinion, that Jean-Luc Brunel was promoting the French modeling industry, or that little E was promoting the Victoria's Secret modeling careers. And that was one of the guises that Jeffrey used to lure these young women into his abuse. So you had the modeling for Victoria's Secret, which goes right back to Leslie, the owner of Victoria's Secret, the owner of Bath and Body Works, the owner of Express, and ties right in with Abercrombie and Fitch. You got Michael Jeffries with that. So he was promoting modeling for Abercrombie and Fitch and Hollister, and recruiting many quote unquote models for this ring, this international ring. It's so terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. I mean, the casting couch is nothing new. It's something that's been going on for as long as history, basically. But to have this like organized pedo systematic exploitation and violation at any age is terrifying, but especially children. Children are so vulnerable. So vulnerable. So yeah, with Ninja being here at the beginning of this stream, just really thinking about Maddie Soto and her terrifying nightmare that she didn't live through. I mean, she lived through a lot of a terrifying nightmare until she ceased to. 11 minutes behind. Oh no. Did you see Nancy Grace's segment with another little E survivor? I did, Mrs. Amir. I did watch that. I think I watched some Nancy Grace, and right now my mind is just so flooded with like TMI. And, I usually like Nancy Grace a lot. I quit liking her with the Idaho 4 case because she, like everybody on News Nation, is just so hell-bent on convicting the accused without due process and without evidence. It's the exact same thing Trumpster Fire was doing to Mr. Garcia and so many others that he deported to El Salvador. You got to have due process. I mean, little E was already processed through the system with that case in Florida in 2008 when Alex Acosta protected his hiney. And then he was rearrested in 2019. So all of the abuse that happened for those 11 years, all of those victims that hadn't been victimized before could have been prevented if Alex Acosta hadn't pulled that crap. And then that douchebag was one of Donnie's cabinet members the first time around. So he's got this habit of keeping really crooked douchebags close to himself. And why would that be? Maybe he's a crooked douchebag. It's just terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. So I honestly haven't been able to keep up with what has happened over the weekend with the impeachment process and what's been happening with the protests on the Capitol, at the Capitol. And honestly, sometimes it just seems hopeless. It just seems like we're going to have to survive almost another 4 years of this administration, which just doesn't seem possible. It didn't seem possible to survive the first 4 years of this similar administration, and a lot of people didn't. And it just seems like it's going to be even worse this time around. All of the mayhem that they wanted to accomplish the first time around and didn't, they seem to be accomplishing quite easily and readily in this first 100 days. I mean, we're probably at like 104 days now, 105. Tomorrow would probably be 106 or 7. Because, I think last Tuesday was the 100th day. So today is Monday. So today would be 106. 106 days too many, in my opinion. And if this election was hijacked, like it seems like it was, when is that going to get addressed? And when is that going to get undone? And who's going to go to prison for that? Like I said, today is just a rant. It's an absolute rant. So, Mrs. Amir, tell me what stood out to you about the Nancy Grace segment. Because like I said, my brain is just kind of flooded. I've been mostly doing the deep dives on the Epstein stuff and all this political stuff. And then that case with the girl in Australia, that captured my attention too. And I can't look up any of it, I don't think, on my freaking phone here. But I can look at some things that I think I can look up some things. Everything's all different because it's a new device. So what do we got here? I wanted to tell you about the name Trump because I didn't believe it, that Trump is a British colloquialism for fart. I'm just going to read this. His family's been especially keen for rebranding Trump in the minds of all Americans as meaning rich and now terrible. But the British have always seen the irony there too. So this is hilarious. Let's see if I can even read this. My gadget. This is hilarious. This is, somebody wrote this. I'm not sure what Trumpster Fire did before Twitter was invented in 2006, but we'll assume he just spent decades waiting for it to come into existence. Maybe he spent his days writing lies on Post-its and sticking them in public spaces before even email became commonplace. That's pretty darn cute. That's hilarious. Let's see. There were a couple of things I wanted to share if I can pull them up. What was that one? Oh, this is a good one, you guys. So you've heard of Blackwater, right? Blackwater is a very shady company, in my opinion, that that douchebag who was the Secretary of Education in the first administration, Dubois or whatever her name was. So her brother had been the CEO of Blackwater, and Blackwater. I'm just going to read you this little paragraph. Blackwater received widespread notoriety for the Ninsur Square massacre in Baghdad when a group of its employees unalived 17 Iraqi civilians and injured 20. 4 employees were convicted in the U.S. and were later pardoned on December 22nd, 2020 by El Presidente Trumpster Fire. So right before the end of his first administration, he pardoned 4 Blackwater employees who were convicted of war crimes at Ninsur Square massacre. And these are things that it's public knowledge, but there's just not a lot of attention given to it. And it's hard to keep up with this stuff. It's really hard to keep up with this stuff. How about, so how many felony convictions has Abrego Garcia had? 0. How many felony convictions has Al Capone had? 3. Charles Manson? 7. John Gotti? 13. Jeffrey Dahmer? 15. Donald Trumpster Fire? 34. Isn't that telling? Absolutely telling. Ugh. It's all the gross things they have been doing to fragile young women and kids they have about, and the Royals being part of it made me sick to my stomach. Yeah, it is extraordinarily disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And Vladdy is a perpetrator as well, allegedly. So that's what all the scuttlebutt is about with what they refer to as the PP tapes, is that Vladdy and Trumpster Fire were hanging out many years ago, hiring some ladies of the night and doing the golden shower thing. And there's videotape of that. And that Vladdy has that videotape footage, which is how he controls Donnie. And this has been rumored for years and years and years, and it appears to be true. Even Donnie has brought it up a couple of times recently. And one of the times he brought it up was at a high school gymnasium, talking to high schoolers. And my goodness, over the weekend, he did like what was the auspice of a commencement speech at a graduation in Alabama, where it was just the same old mind dribble of the Trumpster Fire, talking about how unfair the world is to him and how great he is. Like, did he ever say congratulations to any of the graduates? Did he ever speak well of their futures and wish them luck? I doubt it. I mean, I haven't watched the entire thing because it's just so nauseating. I probably would need a barf bag or a bucket or something, or more than one, right? Okay, we're just at about an hour. Let me look through my notes and see what else I need to put in this before I wrap it up. What is this? The fines for Elon. I thought it said fires. I was like, what? Like I said, sometimes I can't read my own writing. So Mr. Trumpster Fire talking about the tariffs, he's always talking about how they're going to make us rich. When he says us, I don't think he's talking about our country. He's talking about himself and his buddies that have hijacked the government. And yeah, they are going to make them rich. They're at the expense of all the rest of us and at the expense of world trade coming to a screeching halt and people not being able to acquire the basic things that they need, not just too many dolls for their kids at the holidays, but just basic, common, simple commodities that we all use on a daily basis. So why is it that in his first administration there was a freaking toilet paper shortage? And was that just our country or was that worldwide? There's never really been a shortage of anything like that at any other point in time that I can think of. Except now I think we're expecting the toilet paper shortage again, and then 100 times worse than that. Like we can't even imagine what we're about to get hit with. And he wants to talk about little kids with too many dolls, the man who has too many yachts and too many mansions and too many wives and too many baby mamas and too many cans of orange spray, orange spray tan. OMG. OMG. So I do have to confess that I was out pulling dandelions again this morning right before I came on. I was trying not to. I went out to check the mail and I was like, maybe if I see one dandelion, I'll get it. But there are a lot that popped up over the weekend with all the rain. We've had a lot of rain here in the Miami Valley. So I was back out there, probably pulled a couple hundred dandelions just right before I came on. That's why I didn't have time to go over my notes as well as I would have liked to. So I apologize for being so disjointed. But I know that it bothers me more than it bothers my viewers. And the viewers that it does bother, they won't watch anyway. So it's fine. And so national security and terrorism, these are the things that Jessica Aber specialized in addition to the cryptocurrency and corruption in the government. She also specialized in national security and terrorism. She specialized in protecting kids from trafficking. Yeah, you guessed it. And you know, her main focus was on financial crimes. She was a top federal lawyer. And she investigated Russia, you guys. Jessica Aber was 43 and very healthy. Just like Virginia Giuffre was 41 and basically very healthy. So I want to wrap up with thoughts about Virginia Giuffre because when she posted on Instagram that weird photograph of herself with that information about the car crash and her kidney failure and the bruising on her face, which I really always have thought that that looks like makeup, not actual bruising. Because one of the things with actual bruising is that you have swelling, and I couldn't see any swelling in the photograph. You just see the brown discoloration. And you also see in real bruising, you see red, you see black, you see green, you see purple, not just brown. So it's my opinion that that photograph is makeup making it looks like bruises and a black eye. And right away I thought, she's in great danger. She probably is going to lose her life very soon, and this is the foundation being laid for people to basically expect that and to not question it. So now you just reminded me for something meant to send you. Oh, good. I'm glad, Mrs. Amir. And thank you so much for being here and all your conversation. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, that's what I really wanted to say with all of this stuff. Same thing with Diddy. Okay. But going back to little E and Donnie, that all of these girls, all of these kids, all of these victims are essentially pawns. They're used as bait to get people like a prince from the royal family or whomever they can to do disgusting illegal things and to get them on videotape so that they can blackmail that person and have them in their back pocket and get them to do whatever they want. So really all of these victims that we're talking about, it's not just that they're being violated in this horrific way that is extremely challenging to overcome, but they're just being used like little minion pawns as bait for these disgusting criminals to do their disgusting things. It's terrible. And look, my yellow went out. How could that happen? There, fixed. Oh no, back to my chakra. Okay. Yeah, so terrible for them to be violated and to be hurt physically, psychologically, spiritually, and then to be treated like they're so insignificant. And just one final thought before I wrap up with Donnie's allegations of himself being like so healthy with his clean bill of health from the doctor. And for anybody who missed it, he said that he was given a clean bill of health physically, psychologically, and spiritually. That his soul was very, very, very healthy. Because that's what doctors do, is they always check the health of your soul. When they give you a physical, they're like, first things first, let's look at your soul. Like, he's just such a freaking weirdo. You'd think he'd be better at lying since he's been doing it all his life. But I think the dementia is really setting in, and I think the walls are really closing in around him, and he's trying to create this whirlwind of distractions so that he can continue to rob, cheat, and steal as much as he and his comrades can before it's over and they all land their butts in jail. Just sent me an email. Thank you, dear. I appreciate that. I love getting your emails. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. It is 1:11. It's like magic fairy time, like 11:11, but just 1:11. Again, thanks so much for being here, Mrs. Amir, and thanks to all of the viewers that watch. And please make sure you're still subscribed. If you are subscribed, share a video of mine with somebody that you think might like it and turn on your notification bell to ring. And what else? Yeah, I'm going to try to do a video every day this week, because when I miss 3 days in a row, I'm just like all rusty and can barely function. But I'll do it anyway, just because it's my thing, and I miss you guys. I miss the back and forth, the dialogue, and all of that. So have a great day. Drink your water, eat your protein, fruits and veggies, and yeah, let's just get this toxic crap out, eradicated. Thanks again. See you soon. And let's see if this will work. All right.